Southeastern Bow Hunter Podcast.
Guys, welcome to episode 100 of Southeastern Bow Hunter Podcast. 100 episodes have gone by. 2 years of all of y'all listening and, getting new listeners and guys that have been with the podcast since day one. I just want to say thank you to everybody that has been listening. You've seen me go through the ups and downs. You've seen multiple seasons that I've gone through, from killing pickles behind me to chasing trike last year and a bunch of other deer like Tank and the public land giant that I've seen and just following along with everything that's been going on. I really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. So, to basically do episode 100, I thought it would be fitting to have one of the very first people who decided to work with the podcast, Mr. Joe Miles. And the reason I chose Joe to come on for the 100th episode is because, I look up to Joe a lot. Joe to me is one of those guys that I put in the same realm as like some of the best whitetail hunters, really just some of the best bow hunters that we have around today. And the dude's, track record speaks for that. He's extremely knowledgeable. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about, some of his most recent hunts, some of his best hunts, what's going on with Asio gear. As you know, I've been partnering with Asio gear for about 2 years now, and they have always been one of the best partners that anybody could ever ask for. Their product is, in my opinion, the best out there. I have proof of that. I'll be talking about that in this episode. And I'm just very, very thankful that we've been able to work with all these amazing partners and that Joe has stuck with us for the past 2 years. And I'm very excited to see what comes from, the coming years. So before we get into this episode with Joe Miles, obviously I got to get all the other partners out of the way. The Bow Hunting League, look, Team SEBH is on the ground, baby. We got one. We're on the board. Dude, my buddy Josh last week killed potentially his personal best. I know it's his first Pope and Young. We tracked for so long. We were tracking till midnight on Friday because the deer he shot, it was a good shot. It was a lethal shot. But when it went to bed down to die, it got jumped by coyotes, and that adrenaline rush, I guess, gave it another, little spurt of life where we had to track this thing a mile. So that was fun. But we are on the board. Waiting for the score to come back so we can, enter it in the Bow Hunting League. If you don't know what the Bow Hunting League is, it's just a competition that happens every single year. It's a friendly competition. It doesn't cost you anything. It brings like-minded bow hunters together. And, I've already made some really good friends from it. And I know a lot of guys that have also gotten a lot of friends from it. There's dudes that have traded hunts. I mean, just crazy stuff, man. So go to the bowhuntingleague.com. Still got some really cool things between Southeastern Bow Hunter and Bow Hunting League that is going to be coming out soon. And so keep an eye out for that. Next up is going to be the Boutique. Michael Stonebreaker, man, he makes some of the best arrow wraps on the market. He can literally make anything that you think of. It's absolutely insane. I've had a few wraps made by him. He's customized a set of arrows for me, and they are fantastic. So if you go to the boutiquellc.com and you see anything that you want, use the code SEBHP, and that'll save you free shipping. So obviously next up, Asio gear. This episode is going to be with Joe Miles from Asio gear. So I'll keep this one kind of short since we're going to be talking about it. Amazing camo. It works. The stories you're going to hear in this episode prove that. And so, when you listen to this episode and you hear the stories I'm about to tell, I think you might be convinced. So when you go to AsioGear.com and you see all the new lineup of camo that they've got and some of the older stuff or just anything that piques your interest, use the code SEBH and that saves you 15% site-wide. Next up is going to be Summit Tree Stands. Dude, Summit is another one that's been around since the beginning, and their products are out of this world. Excuse me. I am hunting out of the Dual Threat Pro SD, which is their newest tree stand that they just dropped at the beginning of this year. And it is extremely quiet, extremely easy to pack in. It's the quality that you expect from Summit. Let's just say that. And I am beyond beyond thankful that they were able to get me that tree stand. And I'm just very thankful that they even wanted to work with us in the first place. And so it's just one of those things. I don't ever see Summit going anywhere. I hope that they're a part of this podcast for a very long time to come. So go to summitstands.com, look at all the accessories they have, all the tree stands that they have. And when you pick out whatever it is that you want, use the code SEBH15, and that also saves you 15%. Next up is going to be Scout Tech. I'm not going to get really doom and gloom about this, but as you guys know, we had that hurricane come through about a week and a half ago, and Ryan and them were in the city that got slammed the most, basically in Georgia. He's okay. Everyone in the family is okay. Scout Tech is okay, but they are going to be running a little bit behind on shipping orders out and all of that because they are dealing with the storm damage. They are dealing with down power lines, down trees. I know Ryan's shed got destroyed that had all his kids for Christmas gifts in it. Like, it's not an easy time for them right now. So send up your prayers for those guys. Thank God that they're okay. But aside from that, Scout Tech, if you don't know who they are, it is a camera software company that is coming out with a new camera soon. It's the very first Scout Tech branded camera. And from what I've been told, it is going to be amazing. And everything that I've been using from them has been working flawlessly. If there's ever an issue, I can always just call Ryan, just like you guys can, and you can let him know what's going on, and he will get it resolved. Next up is going to be Ace Hardware and Social Circle. Some of my boys, man, some of my best friends work up there, and they do amazing bow work. They sell all the products that you would need. So go check them out. Go see what they can do for you, and tell them that I sent you. Next up is going to be Bergie Bowsmith. Bergie Bowsmith is the type of guy that is an absolute killer when it comes to hunting. He also is an absolute wizard when it comes to working on bows. If I ever have any questions, especially in the off season or during season when I'm, shooting my bow and maybe I notice something's a little off or whatever, I can call Bergie up and he can tell me exactly what it is without even having to see my bow. At the end of this season, I will be sending it up to him to get tuned, get some new strings, all that stuff. Bergie's just a great dude. So he and I have been partnered up now for a few months, and I know there's more stuff coming from Bergie Bowsmith in 2025. Can't really talk about it right now, but a lot of big stuff. But go over to bergiebowsmith.com and see all the stuff that he's been able to start selling on his website. It's all the products that you know and love. And when you do that and you pick out what you want, use the code SEBH10 to save you 10%. Next up is going to be VPA. Man, that Omega with bleeders is itching to go through an animal. And I'll just tell a quick story. So I did hunt with it this past weekend. Was sitting to either shoot trike or a doe. Saw a bunch of does. I made a agreement to myself that, hey, I'll wait till 7:00. Gives me 30 minutes to kind of see what's going to come in and out. But I was going to wait till 7:00 to see if trike showed up, and if he didn't, I would shoot a doe. Well, 7:00 rolls around, and all the deer just kind of disappear. Right? It was really weird. They didn't get spooked. Nothing bad happened, but they just off they went. They were eating around, and then they were like, "We're done," and they left. So that around 7:15, I got a text from Josh saying that he shot his buck, which led into us tracking till midnight. But I told him, okay, give me 15 more minutes, and then I'll get down and I'll come meet you. Well, at 7:35, because I wanted to wait just a little bit longer, I decided, okay, it's pretty much dark. I only have like maybe 10 minutes left. And I know Josh is waiting on me, and I just don't think Trike's going to show up. Well, I start letting my bow down, right? And as soon as my bow touches the ground, Trike shows up at 15 yards. So, of course, I try to get my bow back up. I can only get it off the ground before he sees some movement down there, and the bow starts spinning, so he runs off. Well, I get my bow back up, and I get my arrow knocked. I've got that Omega with bleeders on there, to get a devastating wound channel and also put him down quickly. And same situation, dude. 5 minutes go by. It's like almost dark at this point. I can just barely see. There's just enough light to be able to see a shot. And I'm like, well, I don't want to keep Josh waiting. So I'm just gonna get down. Same situation happens, man. My bow touches the ground. And as soon as that happens, Trike comes walking out of the woods in front of me, and I'm stuck with my pants around my ankles. Not literally, but figuratively speaking. There was nothing I could do. So I tried to get my bow back up, and he saw it, and he busted out of there. I say all of that to say that I'm hunting on 1 acre, and I trust the Omega with leaders to put that animal down quickly so it doesn't have to cross property lines. So I don't have to go bother the neighbor to say, hey, there's a dead deer in the yard. Can I grab it? VPA makes amazing broadheads. They're all solid one piece. There is no replaceable blades there except for the Omega with leaders. But even then, they're 0.090 thick. So I mean, they're not going to break on you. And everything they make is just American made, high quality, lifetime warranty. And there's over 70 different broadheads you can choose from. So if you're kind of, playing around with the idea of shooting a fixed blade, go check out VPA, go to their website, vparchery.com, look at everything they have. And when you see what suits you, use the code SEBH10 at checkout to save 10%. Okay, Dialed Archery. So I talked to my buddy Scott Bakken, who is a part owner of Dialed Archery. He was one of the guys that helped start it. They just dropped a new site called The Proof. And there are so many cool things about this site, I can't even begin to talk about it. I'm still using the Arxos. It's still the best site that I've ever used, but I know once I get The Proof, that's probably going to be the new best site that I've ever used. So many different things you can adjust. It's got toolless wind adjustment. It's got a little lever that allows you to adjust the, stiffness or play within the void dial. And it's basically making it where you want to have a set yardage. You can set it to yardage, lock it down. It's not going to move. And it is super simple. They have dual switch tapes. So you've got your tape on both sides. So whether you like it on the inside, whether you like it on the outside, doesn't matter. Dual indicator pins. They've got, I want to say toolless second axis and toolless first axis. I could be wrong on that. And I know the third axis is just a little twist of an Allen key. Super simple, dude. That site literally has everything that you need as a bow hunter. So go check out Dialed Archery. They just dropped it today. I hate that this is coming out a week after they dropped it, but it is what it is. Go check them out. Go see the new site and see if it fits you. And, if not, check out the Arxos because it's still an amazing site. It's the site that I choose to run, and I'm very thankful to be working with Dialed. I'm excited to see what they come out with next, honestly. All right, so these next two we're going to run through a little quick. Camo Dust. I'm going to have an episode with Chris soon. There's going to be a story on there that proves to everybody listening that Camo Dust actually works. And I'm sure I'm going to talk about it in this episode, but Camo Dust is by far the best scent control product that I have ever used. I've hunted 3 times now, 1 time with a bad wind, 2 times with a good wind. And I specifically went on a bad wind because I wanted to test this. Let me just say, I was checking the wind. It was blowing directly to where the deer were. I checked it while they were there, and I did not get smelled. So take it for what you will. I believe in Camo Dust. I think you will too. Go to camodust.com, see everything they offer, and give it a shot. If you have any questions once you get it on how to use it, reach out to me. Go listen to the episode we did last year with Chris. Dude, I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. If you listen to last week's episode, the Bear 2025 product launch, my buddy Dylan Ray he runs this Instagram page and a website called Typical Sportsman. And what that is it's basically just the typical sportsman. That's what he claims he is. Knowing Dylan, like how I know him, he's not lying. He really is just a typical sportsman. So he's making a product now for everybody that is a hunter, everyone that likes the outdoors. So go to typicalsportsman.com and look at all the stuff that he offers on there. When you pick out whatever you want, on there at checkout, use the code typical20 to save 20%. Okay, so that's all the partners. Long intro, but it's the 100th episode. I'm sorry. There's a lot of big things that have been happening lately. Still hunting trike, still trying to kill him. Got more big deer at a different spot that I'm actually going to be prepping up later this week. So the season's ramping up, man. It's October now. Check those scrapes, check your cameras, get in there, find the sign, and hunt those big deer. Before we get started with Joe, though, I have to say it. If you don't know Jesus Christ, please get to know him. This world is going absolutely insane. My faith has been integral in getting us through this hurricane and also getting us through the biolab chemical plant fire that has been, I don't know if the fire is still going, but I drove past it twice today and it is still billowing gas out. We are still dealing with a gas cloud over our city and where my family lives. And you step outside and it smells like you're in a hotel pool. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't know how that happened. The whole thing is stressing the family out. It's not really stressing me out, but it's stressing the family out. And when that happens, there's no one I can turn to that helps me out in order how to like deal with the situation than Jesus. Truly, he is always there whenever you have a problem. You can just turn to him, and it may not be instant, but he will lead you in the right direction. And when you turn around and you see all of that, look, you'll know it was him. I'll tell you guys a very quick story. So it was a very rough morning for us this morning, right? My daughter's sick. Work was kind of hectic. And then obviously the gas cloud and all that other stuff. Well, I was in a job. I did the job. I walk outside. I was in the mountains of Georgia this morning, and I opened the door, and the first thing that hit me was the smell of fire. And I don't mean in a bad way. It was like a campfire, right? That smoke smell that we all love when we go camping, when we're at deer camp, whatever. And it made me, and I told Brock this too, because I called him after and I was like, dude, I just had an epiphany. And it's almost like Jesus was like, hey, look, I got this. Okay. You're stressing out, but everything's going to be fine. And it's just a personal experience, right? This doesn't happen all the time, but this did happen. I step outside and I smell the campfire smoke smell, and I'm in the mountains and I can see the mist off in the mountains and stuff. And I'm looking around, the sun's just coming up, and I'm like, you know, things aren't as bad as they may seem, right? And I felt a sense of peace, and that's what it's all about. You know, if you can get a relationship with him, um, truly, your life will change, and you will start getting moments like that where you just maybe super stressed out, and then you walk outside, and it's just instant peace. And that's him. That's what it is. So just a little story for you guys. I know it's a very long intro. Once again, episode 100. I kind of had to go more in depth on some of this stuff. But this episode is going to be great. I want to say thank you again to all the people who have been listening since day one, and to all the people who have jumped on as time has gone on. I really hope you've been enjoying it. The Ron Buck episode got a lot of people stirred up. Once again, that was just our opinions on it. It is what it is. I wasn't there. I was 3 years old at the time. So there's been a lot that's happened, and there's a lot coming. So keep on the lookout for that. And yeah, man, let's get started with Mr. Joe Miles from Asio Gear. All right, y'all. 100th episode. We got the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Joe Miles from Asio Gear. I always enjoy getting Joe on here because, as you guys know, Joe is an absolute killer. If you've seen his trophy room, wall, whatever you want to call it, it's literally like 20-foot high of just giant deer. It's insane. And so I thought, who better to have on for the 100th episode? So, Joe, what's been going on with you, man? I know y'all been in season for a little over a month and a half now.
Yeah, man. Well, appreciate again you having me on. Congratulations on 100 episodes. That's a quite a feat, man. Most podcasts, I think they say, fall out after about 10 or 15, and to have 100 under your belt, that's pretty darn good. So congratulations on that.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So what's been going on? So I guess, yeah, South Carolina, we came in August 15th, and the deer I hunted some last year, I did relocate him, and I thought I was going to kill him opening day of the season. I had good daylight of him on a natural food source for like the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. And my camera that I had in there started getting kind of low batteries. So I was going to sneak in there on the 13th or the 14th and replace the batteries. And I go driving in there, and lo and behold, another fellow was coming out of there. So not the exact same area, but anyway, I don't know if it was him or what, but the deer completely vanished. He got kicked. So it took a little while to relocate him, and it gets this story. It's got quite a bit of drama. So relocated the buck, figured out kind of where he was bedded. Found a couple really tight points that were coming out of where I actually jumped him out of his bed, and got some cameras in there. And then, like, I don't know, the September, call it the 15th through the 22nd, I got 5 pictures of him going in and out of this one spot, one of which was right at dark. And I was like, okay, come 1st of October, I can get in there. We get a little weather change. I can get back on him. And we just had the worst flood that we have had in our swamp. It's actually was worse than 2015 flood because I think where our bridge is, we measure it. In 2015, it got to 33 feet, but it was only here for 3 days. This year, it got to 31 feet, and it's been here for 7 days, and it's just starting to fall out. So I have no idea if the buck is drowned, if he's made it to high ground, or what. So I'll be hopefully getting back in there this weekend and trying to relocate him and see if he's still alive. But I couldn't even get my cameras out, so I got some cell cameras in there, and I basically watched the entire flood. I've got wood ducks swimming in front of my cameras. I got rabbits swimming in front of them. Deer, hogs, everything you can imagine swimming in front of my camera. So yeah, it's been kind of crazy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, for I guess those who don't know, you and I are both down in the South, and we just had Hurricane Helene, I think it was,
Mm-hmm.
come through. And so, how far away are you from Augusta?
I'm about an hour and 20 minutes from Augusta, so
Okay.
not too far.
So, I'm assuming you've heard about how bad they had it.
Oh
Was it
yeah,
was
yeah,
it
yeah.
that bad for
People
you
are
guys
coming.
too?
No, no, no. People are
Okay.
coming up here to get groceries from Augusta. No, we had some really high winds. We didn't get a whole lot of rain. I think 2 or 3 inches of rain,
Mhm.
and we had really high winds, and it snapped a bunch of power lines. So people have been with a little bit without power, but most everybody's back up and running. The big problem for us was all the rain in the upstate. It came down the Broad and Saluda rivers, and that forms the Congaree. They both dump into the Congaree,
Mhm.
and then that just completely flooded. I took a kayak in there Sunday and about
Oh,
drowned. I found out real quick, man, I'm not a boatsman. I need to keep I need to keep my feet on dry ground.
oh man.
I got in some current and thought I could paddle around it, and boy, I about messed up. But I
Dude.
found one levee that had about 3 feet of solid ground on each side, and there were hogs and coyotes and all kind of stuff up on that levee. And then it was
Wow.
like 10 feet of water on each side, so it was wild.
Dude, and see, that's what's I guess so crazy is like, people think, that these animals will like just intuitively know, right? And then, I mean, obviously they know where to go, right? But it gives me a whole new respect for them that we can go in our houses and we can be out of it. They can't,
Yeah.
and it got me worried when you were saying about, or talking about that buck, and then you talk about the flood. I'm like, did you see him go floating by and he was just,
No, but
gone
see,
or
see what happens when they're this is a floodplain and it
yeah.
floods. We get little floods, 2 or 3 a year, and what happens? These does, they teach their fawns, all right, this is the high spot, and they
Mhm.
go to that high spot. But when you get one like this that covers 90% of those high spots, they have to come off of those and they're swimming. They don't know where to go.
Yeah.
And those fawns, they're the first ones to drown. And so, fingers crossed, they got out of there, and hopefully some of those more mature deer were able to get up on high ground. But it's pretty sad actually. And we're gonna have to get in there. And luckily I know a lot of the surrounding landowners, and if there's a big fawn wipe off, there's a bunch of fawns that died, we'll probably all go to bat and try and just suspend shooting any does for maybe this year and next year. But we got to assess everything and see how bad it is. But I know in 2015 there were a couple landowners that suspended shooting any does for 2 years, and we may be in that. I don't know yet. I don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse. And
Yeah.
I've started actually getting some pictures today, and it has been a few does that are like walking in knee deep water. So they're some of them survive for sure.
Yeah. Well, good. I mean, I just because out here, man, like so I hunted that Friday when everything moved out.
Yeah.
And it that morning when I was driving to work, it was pretty rough. I mean, the eye of the hurricane was maybe a mile away from where I was. And you get near it and it's just ripping wind. And then so it moves off. I get to work, I start, doing my thing, and then I step outside. I was at some like lithium battery plant doing their inspection. And I step outside and I feel like I'm in a tornado. Like it is just going and going.
Yeah.
And so I started thinking, I was like, dude, I'm supposed to be in a tree today? Like, this is
No chance.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
So by the time I went and got out, and got off work and got in the woods, it was still pretty breezy. But I'm like, dude, is this all that we had? And then Ryan, who lives in Augusta, he and I were talking that morning, and he was telling me about like how bad it was. Well, he sent me photos, and his shed got destroyed. That shed had all their Christmas gifts in it. He was talking
Oh
about trees
no.
and power lines. Yeah, I'm like, dude, we got lucky. And so I told him, like, if there's anything you need, dude, let me know.
Yeah.
Because I go up to Augusta every Monday. They completely canceled everything. They were saying there's people like shooting each other for groceries, fighting
Oh
over
my
gas.
gosh.
I know. I'm
Terrible.
like, dude, what's happening?
Yeah.
So it just, I don't know. This past weekend was wild. But to that point, I need to give you, I need to give you credit, or really give Asio credit. So people, hear me in the intro every week. I'm like, oh, Asio is the best camo I've used, this, and that, right? When I say that, I want you to know that I fully mean it, because I have used it now. Um, this season, I've gotten spotted twice, and it's not because of anything other than me just moving and being fidgety, right? Um, they have no idea what I am. So, however you got on that pattern, however y'all were able to put that on clothing, it absolutely works.
Well,
And
I'm glad to hear that, man. Yeah,
yeah,
that's great.
I've
Yeah,
had
that's
does look directly at me. I had a fawn last week. So there was a couple does fighting, and they like dispersed, right? Well, the fawns ran under me, and I'm only like 15 foot up, right? I've got good cover and everything, but I'm not that high. And I see these fawns come by, and they come walking by, and one of them looks directly up at me and kind of is like looking at me like, what are you? And then just keeps on going. Dude, amazing stuff. So
awesome.
all the people who listen and don't think it's true, I'm living proof that they don't know what you are. You look like a giant owl. So
Yeah, good stuff.
um
No, it's a natural ambush predator pattern, and I think the good Lord and nature got it right. You don't see a whole lot of natural predators with green in their camo. You
mhm.
just don't see that. And there's a reason for that. And so yeah, that we poached from nature. We took the pattern from natural predators, and we hear story after story after story of what you're saying. But thank you very much. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, man. I mean, like I said, I just have to give you credit. I may have already told you that story too. I don't even know. But
No, I don't. I hadn't heard that. That's
okay,
awesome.
well, I'm looking forward to the rest of the season with it, because I've already had one close encounter with my target buck and made two rookie mistakes within 5 minutes, and could have killed him, but I didn't. And it made me want to jump off my stand without my strap
Oh,
on. Let's just say that. It was one of those situations where it's like, what am I doing here? But anyway, enough of that depressing stuff. It'll get better. Your
yes.
season, your son killed a really good deer opening day, didn't he?
He did. That little scooter got to go in. And my wife and him gang up on me now, and anytime I get trail camera pictures or anything, and it's just my wife and I, and I'll go, oh, and she goes, oh, you got a good one, and then she'll call Jack, my son, and say, Dad got a good picture somewhere. You need to find out where that is. So, yeah, he got the old automatic kill opening day.
That's
So yeah,
awesome.
he got a nice one, and I was very proud of him because I was hunting on the adjacent property and he shot him. And, obviously he texted me and said, Dad, I just 10 ringed one. And he said, I think I heard him go down. And I said, all right, you do you, buddy. You should wait. You got to depend on, where you think you hit him, follow the blood trail up, whatever you want to do. And about an hour later, I got a text. I found him. He sent me a picture of him. He loaded him up on the 4-wheeler, brought him over to our place where we got him. And so, yeah,
Dang.
it was pretty neat to be a part of that and see him evolving. It's good stuff.
That's awesome. So what buck was it? Like, what kind of buck was it?
It was probably a 110, 115 inch 8 point, just a real solid 3-year-old, 4-year-old buck, and that's the second deer he's killed with a bow in South Carolina. So
Oh
yeah,
wow.
I'm
Okay.
I'm, I'm real happy for him, and he was very fired up, obviously, and so yeah, that was a great start to the season.
So he's well on his way to start following in dad's footsteps and catch his giants. I like
Oh,
it. I like it.
yeah. I'm sure he's gonna do. I'm sure he's gonna do real well. He loves it, and he's bit by the bug just like you and I.
Awesome, dude. Well, I saw you post that, and I was like, dude, that got me so hyped up, because y'all season starts 3 weeks before ours, I think. So I'm like, okay, it's that time now. Joe's kid killed one. I need to go kill one. And here
Yeah.
I am letting does walk, and it's been one of those years. But
Yeah.
so you're good buddies with the DeQuistos, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know how many, like if you listen to other podcasts or just listen to podcasts in general, but both Andre and Cody were on the Hunter podcast recently.
Hmm.
And it got me, first off, I think they are some of the best whitetail hunters out there. Andre is hilarious. That dude
Yeah.
reminds me of my uncle in Chicago that every other word's a cuss word, but it's always funny, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And
Yep.
so it got me watching a lot of their lone wolf videos on YouTube. And I want to say that you have one on there and you did something really risky that ended up actually working out. You know which
Okay.
video I'm talking about?
I do not, but
Okay.
help me out.
So it's the one where you had this, I think he was a 10 point, and you, I want to say, had really good access, but he kept figuring out that you were coming in that way. And it may not have been a lone wolf video. I just know that I watched this.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like it was, but you had to basically give him the wind and make like a direct beeline to your stand. And then he comes up the little ridge and you shoot him at like 20 yards or something like that. You remember
What
what
was
buck
it?
I'm talking about?
Was it a Kentucky buck that I shot last year?
I think so. Is that the one
Um,
where like you had to basically go on a risky wind and come in through like your access point, and then you couldn't go your regular access, so you had to just go straight to the stand, go through like a bunch of water and all that?
I shot a buck in Kentucky last year that I tried to get in through a river, and I
Yes, that's
couldn't.
the one. That's the one.
Yeah, I couldn't get to the stand, so I had to back out because we had gotten 5 inches of rain there, and it had washed the river where I could not get in the way I wanted to come. So I went to Plan B, and Plan B was to come straight across the funnel, straight to my stand,
That's what it
and
was.
it worked because he came up through there that morning, and he actually smelled where we had walked across, but it was too late for him. I was already drawn, and he was in trouble. So
Smacked him.
that is something that, I mean, you got to get where you got to get, right? You have to get there, and people do put a lot of emphasis on access, and access is important. But when you get into the rut, a lot of times those bucks are, sometimes 2-3 miles away from. It's not like early season where they're going from a strict bed to food to bed process. These things are out moving, and you've got to be in that tight funnel, and you don't have to have bulletproof access. You've got to get to where you've got to get to the spot.
Yeah.
And I'm hunting all day that time of year. And so, I'm going to get there and get out of there the best I can. But if it's not the absolute best access, that's okay. I've got to be in that spot.
So you wouldn't do that, say, like right now?
No, I wouldn't do it right now. I mean, South Carolina rut is probably about 2 weeks away from firing off. We get going pretty early here. I don't know what this flood's going to do, but normally kind of that 10th of October time, they're really starting to really search for those first
Really?
does. Yeah. So it's early here.
Why is it
Um,
so different for you guys than us? Because I think the earliest I see is like the last weekend of October.
Yeah, we're early, man, and we'll go
Huh.
late too. I mean, I'll see fawns in August that have just been hatched, and I'll see other ones that are, coming out of their spots. So we've got a long rut, and they breed at all different times.
I thought that was
Yeah.
so funny when you said they just been hatched.
Yeah, just had their babies. So yeah, I mean it. So yes, if I guess my thing is early season, late season. I'm a lot more mobile.
Mhm.
I want to get live intel either from cameras or from where I can glass
Yeah.
and see a buck doing the same thing 2 or 3 times in a row, and then slip in with great access and try and shoot him. But when we switch over to rut, I'm getting in the tightest possible funnel I can get, and I'm getting there no matter what. And then I'll obviously have the wind right when I'm in the stand, and then I'll sit there, all day.
I gotcha. So you said funnel, and it got me thinking that I was listening to a couple episodes of Southern Outdoorsman where they did, I think, 1 or 2 episodes with Bobby.
Yep.
And he talks a lot about funnels, a
Yep.
lot. And I like to think I know what a funnel is, but for those who definitely don't know, can you explain what a funnel is and how deer use it and pretty much how we're able to figure out, say we're scouting, how do we know that we're looking at a funnel?
Yeah. So that's a very good point. And, I've got to give Bobby, who we're talking about here is Bobby Worthington from Pikeville, Tennessee. And he's kind of a legend. He's 70 years old and one of the best woodsmen I've ever been around.
He's 70?
Yep.
What?
Yeah. And still getting after it
Dang.
like he's our age.
He doesn't look a
And
day over like mid 50s, maybe.
yeah, I tell him he doesn't look a day over 72, and he doesn't like that line. But yeah, he's really been my mentor. Everybody kind of has a mentor, and he has been definitely my mentor in rut hunting and how he goes about hunting big woods. So a lot of this is going to be what he preaches, and I'm going to regurgitate a lot of it. But that is a very good point. Is that a lot of guys say, okay, I'm in a pinch, I'm in a funnel, but they're not really.
Mm-hmm.
They think they've got like an hourglass of timber that comes together. They see that on the map and they go, oh, that's a funnel. But that's not really a funnel. What I think what we should start with is how do you find a funnel, right? So that would be step one. And I just got back from Kentucky. I went and walked a 480 acre tract of land to potentially hunt in the rut. And I was looking for 1, 2, 3 funnels on that property, and I found one. I found one spot for a stand on that entire 480 acres, and it is the best spot on that farm for rut hunting. And now I'll explain why that is. So I went in and started following creeks and looking for creek crossings and trails. And I finally found a good trail. And there's a difference in trails. There are trails that are long range travel where the deer are going a long way. And then there's little feeding trails, like trails that'll go into an oak flat or trails that'll go out to the edge of the field. A lot of them are doe trails, but those long range trails will have like some historic sign on it, some historic buck rubs. This time of year, they'll start to have scrapes and that sort of stuff. And so I start following a trail and see where it goes. And so we did that for hours and hours on this property. And finally, we got down, we followed a trail down the edge of the river. And then I looked, and there's this giant, probably 30-foot high bluff that comes out of the river where the creek had gotten real high and washed all this out. It was a big bend in the river. And I'm following this trail. It dips down. It was dry at the time. The river was dry. It dipped down in there, came up the other side, and it was right on the end of that bluff where that bluff kind of tapered down. And I walked up there, and then sure enough, there were 3 other trails that came from different locations down to that point, because that's how they get around that bluff. And so I followed each one of those other trails, and they were out through the timber, and they all were long range travel trails. And there was just historic rub after historic rub after fresh rub, all right in there. And then you go back to that point of that bluff, and that's your funnel. That is where the funnel is, where all those trails come together at that one point. I put a camera right there. I already picked out a tree. I cut some shooting lanes, got everything set up, put the camera in there. Lo and behold, 4 days later, I get a 150-inch deer walking right through there. And we walked the rest of the property. There was nowhere else that was near as good as that spot for rut hunting. So that what defines, and there's a lot more to it. And Bobby can explain it very well because he's done it a long time, and not to push people to other podcasts. But if you want to go listen to those 2 podcasts, what is the name? Southern Outdoorsman?
Southern Outdoorsman.
Yeah. If guys want to listen to that, I mean, we share the love, right? I got a podcast. You got a podcast.
Oh, yeah. I love those guys. They're awesome.
Yeah. They are. Jacob and those guys are great. So, yeah, guys, if you want to really get a first-class lesson in funnels, go listen to that. And I want to regurgitate a ton of what he says.
Yeah.
But basically, it's a man-made feature or a terrain feature that the deer are forced in a certain direction. And it's a one-sided funnel, meaning like if you have a ditch like in a draw, a big ditch, and they're going around the end of that draw, that would be a one-sided funnel. But if you have that ditch and then on the other side, like a cattle fence or something like that, or there's a big blowdown or a bunch of timber piled up, and it tightens it up even more, or you can get in and do some hinge cutting, you can create a two-sided funnel that forces everything even tighter together. And he talks about mathematics and how if you've got one good trail going through an area, you know, your odds go up more than having no trails. But if you can get two or three big long range corridors that come together in one spot with a lot of old and fresh buck sign on them that all come together at a feature like that, you've increased your odds by 4, right? Because you've got 4 chances of a buck to come down one of those corridors and come by that feature. So that's basically what a real funnel is. And that's how you find them. It's really the best time to find them is February, January, well, February, March. All the leaves are off the trees and you can really follow those trails. And if you just get in there and start following those long range trails through the timber, eventually you're going to come to where 2 or 3 of them come together and it'll be at the head of a big ditch. You know, like we've got one. It's hard to find them in flat ground where we hunt because we don't have all the terrain. But I've got a couple of them that the river and a big drainage ditch come together. I've got another one. They've got a enclosed duck pond. They fence around their duck pond to keep the hogs out. We got such a hog problem. And so they do that. And then around the end of the fence on the south end, there's a whole bunch of blowdowns and logs and stuff that have just naturally created. They don't want to go, they can't jump over that fence. It's too tall and they don't want to go through all that junk. So it forces them right there around the end of that fence. And I'm not getting a whole lot of pictures there right now, but I know come October when they start going from one end of the property to the other, that spot right there will be dynamite.
So I've been doing it wrong this entire time. Because
Uh-oh.
I always thought that a funnel, so I have this public land by my house that literally one of my Scout Tech cameras on there is called public funnel because you've got a fire break on the left side and you've got a field on the right side. And it's just this little stretch of woods so basically the fire break goes around and then it's a stretch of woods that comes down and then opens up into more. And there's like a trail that goes through it or whatever. And I mean, I've gotten some of the biggest deer I've had on camera all year walking through there, but it's not very consistent. And they're just hitting a mock scrape that I made. And to me, looking at it from the aerial map, it looks like a funnel, but it's all flat. And there is nothing really around that's going to make them have to use it. So,
yeah, and it's a lot of that. I deal with the same thing where I am. I deal with the same thing, but it can be very, very subtle. Like I've got another one. You've got to have drainage ditches, and you've got fire breaks, you got drainage ditches, so you can get down in those drainage ditches and just follow them, and there'll be a spot where they level out just a little bit, and then they'll get back deep, and I guarantee you, right there where they leveled out, there'll be a trail because those bucks don't like walking down in those ditches. They don't like jumping. They don't like jumping across them. They will do all that. But they want to conserve energy, and so they're gonna really walk where it's easiest for them, and then you can tighten those up. Like for example, that one where you've got the fire break and the other side. I mean, it's public though, isn't it? Didn't you say it was public? Yeah, so you can't do any hinge cutting in there, but you could if it was 2 or 3 trails going through there, right? You're like, God, if I get here, I can't shoot all the way to that one, and if I get here, I can't shoot back to that one. That becomes a dilemma. You can actually pile brush and stuff up and force a couple of those trails together at a certain point. So you can drag a bunch of brush in there and pile them up and kind of angle those trails together and get them a lot closer to where you need them to be. And they'll do that. They'll avoid those big brush piles and stuff, and they'll alter their path. You can look at it and see some of it you can't. They'll just go on the other side, and you can't, drag the whole forest in there.
No, I can't.
Some of them you can tighten up.
Okay. Yeah, because I heard him talking about tight, or I think if I'm right, didn't Bobby say something about like tight funnels? And
yep.
Okay. So that's what you're talking about. It's basically where it's a very tight.
Yeah. So he loves to shoot them close. He won't tell anybody that. Well, he will tell, but he doesn't brag about it. He's an 8-time world recurve, not national, but 8-time world champion recurve shooter. He can outshoot most people at 20 yards with his recurve they can with compound. I went
Wow.
and shot with him the other day, and it's like watching Michael Jordan shoot free throws. I
Holy
mean,
crap.
he's sitting there bull crapping with us. We're sitting at the archery range, just kind of cutting up, laughing, and then it's time to shoot. And you talking about flipping a switch. He goes into full on concentration mode. And I mean, he's got 3 hours arrows touching at 20 yards with his recurve. I mean,
Wow.
it's pretty amazing. He's one of the best in the world at that.
Dude, I shot recurve once at 10 yards and I hit about 3 foot high. And I'm like, I wasn't even aiming there. How'd that happen? So that's
It's
amazing.
tough. It's
That's so
challenging, no
wild.
doubt.
Okay, so we did a little crash course on funnels. What would you say? Because I'm thinking about like um trying some more risky stuff on public this year. Because I'm not gonna even get to hunt it till next month. And when the archery, because it's a 3-day archery season, it falls on a date that last year one of the bigger deer I had on camera that's well outside his ears daylighted. So I'm trying to think of what I can maybe try to do to be able to get on him if maybe he's not showing up or he's not really showing up a lot. What's one of the more risky things that you have tried and has worked?
I used to be into the whole find their beds and all that stuff. And over the last 3 years, since I really adopted this rut funnel stuff, I'm going to rain on your parade a little bit. If I was you, what I would do this weekend is go to that public spot. If you're allowed to go in there and walk, I don't think this is if the season's not in or whatever. But I would go in there and man, I would walk that thing from front to back and find me a good funnel. I'd find me a good funnel where 2 or 3 trails came together. I'd pick me out an east or a south and a north or an east and a west. I'd have both those trees picked out, ready to go, marked so I could get in there in the dark if I needed to. And then come next month when your rut's going, man, I would go live right there. And if they're good tight funnels, eventually that buck is going to be between does or out looking for the first does, and it's going to force him through there. That's what I would do. I've gotten away, especially in the rut now, doing all this, trying to find bedding and doe bedding, and it just that works.
Yeah.
Anything happen in the rut, and there's 2 words that you never use in whitetail hunting, and that's always and never. So it can work. It can work doing that, but I think you really increase your odds, as Bobby would say, by getting in a tight funnel during the rut that forces their movement. And so if I was you in that's what we did in Kentucky. I knew we were going to be hunting a new farm. We've got our old farm that we had permission to hunt and we can hunt back in there, but I wanted to have another one and we got permission to hunt another property. And I went and walked that entire thing last weekend and, made a road trip, went all the way up there for 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, walked the whole thing from top to bottom and, put a camera in there. And it was a early evening. I mean, it was daylight when that buck came through there, but he was an absolute shooter. And I know there's a good deer in there, and I know he's comfortable coming through there. I know he's comfortable coming through there after I've been in there. And now it's set. Maybe something bigger shows up in there, but I'll shoot him. I'll be happy to shoot him.
Yeah, it
Out
is
of state,
Kentucky.
out of state, I got no problem with that. So that's what I would do. That would be my recommendation, and try to instead of trying to push the envelope and try to do risky stuff, I'd go in there right now and find you some good rut funnels to hunt during the rut. That's what I would do.
Okay. I know where to start too, because I've got one spot. So me and my buddy went and scouted actually back in February on this public land. We were shed hunting and just trying to find different spots. And I found, I don't know if it was a funnel exactly there. It may have been, it was kind of on the top of like this small ridge. So probably not, but there was some very thick stuff behind where the scrape was that these deer really couldn't go through. Like they have to go through the fire break. And we walked through that entire little section. It was probably like 10, 15 acres and found rub after rub and scrape after scrape. And then we found this little swampy section that you could literally see the deer were using as a travel corridor, and even found a shed in there. And so over there, I'm sure that just based off of the terrain that I've seen and also mapping that I've done, there's got to be something in there. So that's probably where I'll start. Could you find, so like the guys that like the e-scout, because I do that a lot, could you potentially be able to find a funnel by e-scouting if you go like the 3D map and then just look at the topography? Or is it
So
really
Bobby and I teach a course at his home property in Pikeville,
okay?
and we looked at 23 funnels with the guys that attended that class. 23 different funnels. Not one of them can you see from a topo map. I think there's one that
Yeah,
you can tell. It's boots on the ground, man.
gotcha.
The You can look at a topo and say, okay, I need to go see this area, that area, and this area, and it can maybe save you some time. But a lot of those ditch funnels don't show up on those topo maps. It could be a real tight runoff of water, like that bluff. You
Yeah.
can't see that bluff, the one in Kentucky, on a topo. You see there's a little bit of transition there and a little bit of elevation change, but it doesn't look any different than the rest of that ridge. But when you
Okay.
get in where that washout is, it's you would have never found that had you not walked it.
Got it. So it's just
So,
not deep enough, basically, of a I guess elevation change to show up on the map.
but my other spot in Kentucky, you can absolutely see it on. It's a
Oh, okay.
huge bluff. It's probably 100 feet of elevation change, and all the topo lines are basically stacked on top of each other. So you can look at that and go, okay, I got to go see that. And sure enough, it's actually got 6 trails that all come together right there.
Gotcha.
So,
So
so
I gotta ask you for the guys that maybe don't know, and again, I want to be sure that I know. Can you explain what a bluff is, just so everyone listening is sure they know what they're thinking?
yeah, like a river bluff, it's the high side of the river.
Got it.
You know, it's
Okay.
it's the high side. It's the bluff off the river or off a creek. It's the high side of it, and a good steep bluff. Deer, literally, humans, deer, whatever, they can't climb up it or climb down it.
Okay. Got it. That's what I thought it was. I just wanted to be sure because I'm thinking like, well, bluff could mean so many different things. Just like I thought I knew what a funnel was, and I
Yeah,
didn't.
like a high bank. A
Okay.
high bank that makes it kind of impossible to climb up and down.
And so, thinking on that, what's crazy is I actually have a spot on a private piece that I hunted one time last year. And when I scouted it, it was like mid-season, right? Because at that point, I just wanted to see where these deer were going so I could try to get on one. I'm not gonna say all the bucks had disappeared, but the big ones were already gone. This was like in December. And I was walking through and I went on exactly what you're talking about, where I've got like, there's a dry creek bank or dry creek basically in the back that flows out. And then you've got 2 ridges on the side. And on the right side on my property, you could look and you could see like a heavily used trail. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to just set up a camera and then I'll go hunt it. I set the camera up and I saw so many deer on there. I went in and sat for 20 minutes and shot a doe. And
Nice.
so I think I may have found a little bit of what you're talking about. Maybe one of those trails that leads down to a funnel.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything you're saying, I keep thinking back to that spot where I'm like, okay, well, it's super thick over here. They can't really go up this ridge, and they kind of have to go the way that where I'm
Yeah,
sitting at.
the sign will tell you. And you mentioned a swampy area. They'll walk around water where they can. They'll wade through water where they don't have to swim, and then they'll swim where they have to swim. But they don't really like to get out in that water if they can avoid it. So in the South, it's a good if you've got a lake or a river or a pond and some other stuff, around the edges of those things when they're trying to go long range, that can be really good. You can
Okay.
find some things around the edge of ponds. Rivers can force them certain ways, like the big deer that I'm gonna hopefully, knock on wood, he's still alive, that I can get back in there and hunt. It's a river and a road, a funnel. It's a
Hmm.
river on one side and then like a major road that traffic not like public, but
Yeah.
it's a private road, but it pinches it way down right there, and so that's where I'll hopefully get a crack at him.
Okay. Look at you get that, man. This is why you got those big deer on the wall.
I don't. Well, I've had some real good mentors, man, and I've
Yeah.
done it. I've done it myself for 30 years, and you made every mistake and tried everything just about under the moon that you can make. And I guess if I had to credit anything, it'd be work ethic and being able to check my ego. I'm not afraid to reach out to guys that are 70 years old that have been in the game a long, long time and pick their brain and be very humble and be a sponge around those guys. Cause at the end of the day, I'm just trying to get better and I don't know everything.
Yeah.
So it's good to be around those old timers that have got a lot of big deer. I mean, Bobby's had 7 bucks featured in North American Whitetail. I mean, he's a legend and he's
Jeez.
got a system. Now, where he and I differ is he will not hunt early and late season. He blows it out from about October 25th to maybe the first, second, third of December, and that's it.
Huh.
He doesn't hunt, or he'll go shoot does and stuff early
Yeah.
season, but he won't hunt a buck. And I'm big on, the first week of the season, especially in those early states. I think that can be one of the best times to kill a big deer when he's still on his summer pattern, like a Kentucky or a South Carolina where the season comes in early. So
Mhm.
I'll do that. And then I don't have a problem getting in on a late season food source in Ohio, where the season goes all the way to February. You can get on some standing beans and then, be super mobile. Once you see one that's coming out and feed in those areas in the bitter cold, then you can get on them too. So that's where I guess he and I would differ a little bit, because I try to maximize the entire season and he really just focuses on the rut.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I've been noticing and going back to like talking about, Bobby and the DeQuisto, or I'm not gonna say the DeQuistos because Cody's like 4 years older than me, but definitely Andre. The guys that have been in it for so long that know what they're talking about. And the fact that like Andre on that podcast was like, look, I just want to shoot the world typical. Like I just want to shoot the world record typical. That's what I want. I'm not
Yeah.
getting excited about a 150 or 160. And I'm sitting there like, I'll kill him for you if you want, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
What? I mean, and I'm not at that point yet, and not many people are, but I respect it because it's like, dude, you've done it. And it's the same thing with you, man. I've seen your wall. It's like, I'm shocked you haven't gotten, and maybe it's just the different personalities, right? But I guess what I'm asking is like, do you think that the guys that are just at the top, like you, Bobby, Andre, the Drurys, all those guys, do you think there's a point where you get like, okay, that's a 150, it's cool, but I want to shoot a 200, or I'm just going to hold out for a 200. I'll go 5 years, like how Don Higgins is. Don's the
Yeah.
perfect example.
And
I
and
mean,
that everybody sets their own standard, right? And it's funny you say that, because if you look at how Bobby hunts, if you look at how Andre hunts, if you look at how Don hunts, they're all different. Like
yeah,
there is zero chance you could get Andre DeQuisto to sit in the same funnel for 3 days in a row from daylight to dark. Zero chance you could do that.
yeah,
And there is zero chance you could get Bobby Worthington out of a good funnel the entire rut. He if it's the right one and there's a big deer in the area. I mean, he hunted a buck in Kansas with me last year, and he sat in the same spot for 14 days. Same spot. Never killed the deer, but the deer never came through there either. But it was the tree he needed to be in, and that tactic has worked for him. And it was a small piece of property, and he was in the right spot on that small piece of property. And he got pictures of that buck coming through there at night, right through his spot. Heck, you could see the stand in the background. But he was coming through there. He was coming through there at night. But so it's just everybody's got a different tactic and different things that have worked for them. And I think it's good to pull from everybody.
yeah.
Right. I mean, Andre wants to hunt till 9 a.m, break down, go find go eat breakfast. He loves to eat breakfast. He likes to break down at 9, go eat breakfast and get right back in the woods, scout all throughout the day, find the hottest, freshest new sign. If he jumps a buck out of his bed, get hung right there. And then, just keep moving day after day after day.
Huh.
And, that it's worked for him. I mean, he's killed some absolute hammers doing things that way.
That's
So,
so crazy, man. Like, and that's what I love about this is like everybody's tactics are different. And like I listen to so many hunting podcasts that like I listen to yours, I listen to Hunter, Southern Outdoorsman, Working Class, all of this stuff. And I get all this different stuff being said. And I used to look at it like, okay, well, say you said, well, or say Troy Pottinger, right? I'm going to use, because I've been doing a lot of scrape stuff lately. Say Troy says, well, scrapes are only going to be found, and I know this isn't true, it's all hypothetical, but say he says you're only going to find scrapes on a flat surface down by a creek. But then you got another guy that says, no, you're only going to find scrapes on a ridge that's above a creek. Well, I'd be like, okay, well, who's killed bigger deer? I'm going to go with what that guy says. Now I'm like, well, I'm just going to look at both. Just check them both out, because you never know. It could be a whole scrape line going down and they just aren't seeing it. So the multiple different ways of doing this, it's honestly pretty cool because it gives a lot of people hope that they can try so many different things instead of just trying one thing and getting discouraged from it. Like we were talking about the funnels. That's not the only way to do it. You
No,
know?
it's definitely not the only way to do it. And I think an important thing is to figure out what you are trying to accomplish. I am trying to shoot a 150-inch deer.
Mhm.
Well, if that was my goal in the state of South Carolina, the chances of that happening are pretty slim, especially in my swamp that I hunt in now. That's probably not going to happen. So I've either got to lower my expectations and go, okay, I want to kill a solid Pope and Young buck, or I need to go somewhere else where they've got some 150s.
Mhm.
And so let's continue on that 150 quest. That's my goal. And so I've got resources. I can get to Western Kentucky. I can get to Ohio. You know, for us Southern boys, that's 7-8 hour drive. That's probably doable. And on public land in those states, they've got 150s. You can get in there and hunt hard. So then phase two is I've never hunted Kentucky. I've never hunted Ohio. So what resource can I look at where, you know, first of all, I think the guy's doing it legit. You know, there's a lot of bait piles that come in and then there are tactics that spew off of that.
Yeah.
You know, a buck gets killed over a bait pile, then it becomes, well, I knew he was bedded over here, and you know, he was checking this doe bedding area, and I had my stand set up here in this funnel, and I killed him. When in reality, it was killed over a bait pile. Nothing wrong with shooting deer over a bait pile. My
Yeah.
son, opening day, shot one off of a bait pile. So, you know,
Yeah.
that's
I'm
absolutely
using it.
fine. Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
have to.
But own it, right?
Yeah.
If that's how you killed him. But the problem, I guess, that I have is when there are young guys like my son or you know, young guys coming up and they get on the internet and they're getting advice, and then come to find out, you know, it was, there was bait involved and it was hidden. That was,
Oh yeah.
again, nothing wrong with putting corn out and shooting a deer if that's what you like. But that needs to be, it wasn't a big woods tactic you use to kill
Mhm.
that deer, or a scrape tactic or anything else. And I'm not accusing anybody particular. What I'm saying is, when you do have your goal and you've set it, you need to make sure whoever you're getting your advice from is a legit dude that's done it the way he's saying he did it. You know, if you were going up to Ohio, you know, you just need to make sure whoever you're going to get advice from are guys that are doing it the way you want to do it. And if you can feed in Ohio, you can feed in Kentucky, and there may be some feeding tactics there that can help you. You know, if
Mhm.
you get a small farm and you've got access to it, and you want to put out feed, then that might be something that you want to do. And I don't want to go down a whole, you know, rabbit hole here about baiting and all that. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, following along that 150-inch deer thing, that you've got to get out of your home state. You've got to go to, say, Kentucky or Ohio, and you want to hunt public land, and you've got a 10-day vacation that you've set up for November 5th to the 15th. If that was the case and I was going to hunt public land, I would want to go to different public land in those states the year before, January, February, March. I'd want to walk all those trails and find me a really good couple of rut funnels, pin those, learn how to get into them, and then that's where I'd plan on hunting to kill that deer the next year.
Well, and so it's funny you say all that because that's basically what me and a couple of my buddies are doing. Is my goal this year, for some reason, I got it in my head where I was like, okay, I've got that deer trike. Now he's not going to score that high. If he didn't break his main beam, he probably would have been like a 110-inch 6 point, which is a pretty big 6 point. But
Yeah.
he did, and it is what it is. He's just a deer that I want to shoot. But my other goal is I want to get a Pope and Young in Georgia
Yep.
because after listening to stuff you've said and all the other podcasts I've listened to where all this information's coming in, I feel like I can use all of that to find one on public because that's pretty much the only place. There might be one or two potential Pope and Youngs on private, but that property, it's a whole nother thing. You have to bait over there or it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
But on public, you can't. So I had a realization like 2 weeks ago where I got this 9 point, and he's a big 9. And I sent it to a buddy. I was like, dude, I think I finally got a Pope and Young on camera. Like, it's on the scrape. It's this, it's that. And he's like, dude, that's maybe 120-inch deer, maybe 110. And I'm like, no, it isn't. So I started looking through it, and it really, it slapped me in the face. It's like, dude, finding a Pope and Young in Georgia, is not as easy as people think it is. And so that kind of
No,
started,
no.
yeah. And I'm like, because I've seen, so on this public land, I've told you the story before, I've seen a giant buck there, but it was almost like a ghost, right? It was like I saw him, he ran off, never saw him again. So I felt like that was God's way of being like, hey, man, they're here, but you're not ready for this yet. You've got a little bit to go.
Well, and the same thing, people think I go to Illinois, I'm going to shoot a 150. Man, there are not
Mm-hmm.
150s around every tree. You go to
Yeah.
Iowa, there's not a 150. A 150 that's a heck of a buck. I
Yeah.
mean, that is a heck of a buck. And Pope and Young in the South is a heck of a buck.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. Yeah, it's Instagram and again another rabbit hole. I mean, it's kind of ruined it.
Oh,
You just
yeah.
flip through Instagram and it's just big deer after big deer after big deer after big deer, and then jealousy pops up, and
Yep.
it goes on and on, and the way I look at it, and I try to talk about this a little bit at the beginning of the year, is man, it is a marathon, not a sprint. So just take your time; it'll happen for you when it's right, and be excited for your buddy, your neighbor that got a good deer. It's good for him, and your turn's coming. So
Oh, yeah.
it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, I've really learned that this year, but you know, going back to like I guess the realistic goals thing, you were saying, in South Carolina, if you want to kill a 150, you're going to be very hard pressed to find one. But if you want to go to like Kentucky or Illinois or Ohio or whatever, your chances go up. Well, that's why we're going to Illinois next year. We're going to go
Yep.
hunt Illinois public land because we're all like, okay, the deer here are great, but especially me being from Illinois and seeing the deer that are there, I know what the possibility is. And it's like, if we want to go chase or try to find a couple, maybe let's say 150s, 160s, heck, even a 130. None of us have killed a 130 before. I'd be happy with that.
Yeah,
And
yeah. And Illinois is a no bait state, and their gun season is towards the very end of the rut. They have
mhm,
their muzzleloader or shotgun season there. It's a great state. So yeah, I mean, if your goal is that upper tier deer, that 140, 150, 160, and you live in the South like you and I do, you've got to travel to do it.
exactly.
You got to travel to do it. So that's just it. You set your standard, you set your goal, and then you follow it and you stick to it, right? Higgins is a prime example of that. I mean, it's 180 or bust, and
Yep.
it's really more than that. I mean, at one time it was a 180 or mid 180s typical, 190s non-typical, and that was his minimum standard. That he was not going to
Wow.
shoot anything smaller than that. And I think the male buck he shot last year was in that mid to low 180s as a typical, and that was a deer. No, Babe was the deer's name. Babe was the buck that he shot last year
Yep.
because he was calling his shot and he had like a drawing to name the deer or something like that. And so Babe Ruth, that's where that came from. But anyway, that's a really good point. Is set your goals, set your standards, and stick to them, and then
Yeah.
you'll accomplish what you want to do.
Well, and you'll also be happier too. Like if you live in Georgia, you can't expect to. I mean, I know Seek One, they kill giants, but they're also in a place where that subspecies of deer is. Because we have a couple different subspecies down here. Out where I'm at, dude, these are Georgia bred deer. They're not hitting. There was one 200 that was killed in Greensboro 2 years ago. That's an anomaly. Like a 130 for us is like a 150 in Illinois, right?
Yeah, for
You know
sure.
what I'm
Yeah, no,
saying?
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
There is no, I mean, there's a couple managed farms around here. Like I think, and I would have to look back, but I think at one time, South Carolina only has four net 170s that have ever made the book. Four in the entire history of the record book. Four. 120 makes our state record book. And it's just, back to the Seek One thing. I mean, those guys are freaking awesome.
Oh yeah.
But you can do that too. You can go to the Atlanta suburbs, and I think that those guys have even showed you how to do it.
Oh yeah.
They had a
I've done
course
it.
on how to knock on doors, and that's a whole nother tactic and a whole nother animal. It's a whole nother style of hunting. I think what you and I have been talking with are more big woods, public,
Yes.
big private properties where you get permission, or for in my instance, it's hunt clubs, right? I mean, we've got a 4,000 acre piece, a 2,200 acre piece, a 1,200 acre piece, and an 8,000 acre piece, and you go, oh my gosh. And I can't hunt all of that. I can only hunt about 3,200 acres of that. But there are 85 rifle hunters that start August 15th and go until January 1st on that swath of Congaree River Swamp.
Oh
So
my
it is
God.
tough, and it's corn feeders and food plots and bait piles. It is tough to get a deer to 4, 5, 6 years old. It's hard. It's hard to find one, in that area, but it teaches you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Teaches you a
Mm-hmm.
lot about how an older deer operates different than, the average run of the mill 2 and 3 year old.
So you got my wheels turning now.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope me asking you this isn't pushing you to let one of your secrets out. But when you're hunting those properties where you've got just bait piles everywhere, I don't know if you add into that, like if you put bait out or not, whether you do or not. I'm for it. If you do, great. But if you don't, do you have to sort of learn how to hunt those deer around that to where it's like, okay, this buck's going to this pile, he's going to this pile. Where can I set up to get him going either to and from? Or is there a certain tactic you have to learn with that where it's like, hunting sort of using it, but not over it, where it's you find where he's going, if you get what I'm saying?
So I do a lot of feed early season to locate deer.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put feed out to locate deer, and obviously my son shot one over a bait pile. Me personally, I don't learn anything about a deer by shooting it over a bait pile.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to learn guys that are coming up that want the success, that want to get some deer under their belt. They put out some bait. My son, prime example. I had a corn pile set up for him, had a text camera on it, and if he had the right wind, it was a good chance he was going to get a crack. He got in there, and guess what? He's more and more excited about deer hunting now. And he's already come to me and said, Dad, I share cameras with him. He said, Dad, I saw that on the hunt club that he and I are members of. I saw that big 8 come through that funnel. You think I might can get in there and hunt that funnel? And he's already wanting to come off the bait, and he feels like it's more pure,
Yeah.
right? To do it the other way. And so it's good. It's good to get some people and get some deer under your belt, and use the feed maybe to get inventory and that sort of thing. And they always say if your neighbor's baiting and you aren't, you don't have a chance. What I have found is those bigger, more mature bucks, especially here where they get to maybe 4 or 5, they're not going to hit those bait piles in daylight.
Yeah.
They're just not coming to them. And so they'll come to them, and guys will, get pictures of them every night at 2 a.m., every night at 2 a.m. I mean, just over and over and over. And then they'll hunt those spots, hope and prayer that the deer will come in during daylight. And it just a lot of times it doesn't happen. Again, always and never, right?
Yeah.
They don't never come into them, but the chances aren't good. So I'll get away from them. And again, when's that deer going to move in daylight? Right? When's he going to move in daylight? And that's the rut, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
that pre-rut and that rut. And there's a chance a doe could lead that buck into that food plot or into that bait pile. He may stick right with her and come right in there. But I've seen bucks that actually will take does away from that stuff, won't let them get out in those food plots, won't let them get to those, it cuts them off and bird dogs them and keeps them in the cutover. And if you can find that funnel, it's away from that bait and where those 4 or 5 trails come together around that feature, and log your hours and be persistent and stay there, even in our swamp ground, even on these 115s, 120s, these mature bucks, you can kill them off that bait. And you learn so much. I mean, if tomorrow they outlawed baiting, they said, okay, they've equated CWD to bait piles, and guess what? There's a national ban on baiting. There are going to be a lot of people that are lost.
Yeah.
They are not going to have a clue how to get in the woods and do anything. And it's almost a lost art, the woodsmanship that a guy like Bobby, that a guy like Andre, that those guys have. It's almost a lost art of woodsmanship. And that's why we're doing such a big push with these classes and books. Bobby wrote a new book that we're selling through Asio. We book all of his classes through Asio to get people out there to start understanding woodsmanship skills. And because as humans, and again, I'm philosophy rabbit hole here, as humans, it's natural for us to try to make things easier.
Yeah.
Right. We got escalators. We got moving sidewalks in the airports. We got airplanes that get you from
Cars.
A to Z in 30 seconds. We got cars that, drive themselves. I mean, we're constantly trying to make things easier. We've done it with hunting too. We got a crossbow now that'll shoot 400 feet per second, and 80 yards is nothing. We've got bait piles and cell cameras. There are cell cameras now that use algorithms to tell you what your chances are of hunting a certain area for a particular buck.
Are you serious?
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
I didn't know that.
It's gotten to where we're trying to make things so easy. And to me, hunting is sacred.
Yep.
Right. And again, I'm not running down anybody that uses a crossbow, a cell cam, and a bait pile.
Yeah.
If that is what makes them happy and they're proud of that and they want to shoot deer and that's how they like to do it, it's a free country. Do what you want to do. I just feel like, to me personally, and some guys that I know and hunt with, the art of figuring out that deer on his terms and killing him in his world where he's acting like a deer and you outsmarted him in a natural setting, when that buck goes on the wall and you look at that deer, and there just seems to be more, it's more honor in how that went down. Again, I'll probably get a bunch of flack for that, but it just, that's how I feel. Is it, again, nothing wrong with it. I mean, heck, we're talking 2 months ago, my son blasted one off of a big corn pile, opening day of the season. So, I think there is a place for it, and especially for guys that are getting going and want to get a couple of deer under their belt and, get the buck fever out and all that, and then grow into kind of the woodsmanship and the natural hunting. So that's my soapbox philosophy.
Well, it's funny you say all that, because that, I feel like, is sort of where I'm headed. Because the one property I've got that's 1 acre, I've got a scrape up there that, trike was using all year long. And the only reason I'm not trying to like defend why I'm doing, I'm just kind of telling you the tactic there is, I got these deer basically trained. Like, I put food out yesterday. Okay.
Yep.
2 minutes after I left, I don't even think I was out of the neighborhood yet. I already had does on it. And so I look at that property as like, if trike wasn't there, I'd still be doing it, because I could still shoot some does if I wanted to. Say I've got a spot that I've hunted twice and it seems kind of burnt out, I'm gonna give it a couple weeks, I can go over there. It just so happens that one of the bigger deer I have on camera happens to be there too. And so that place, I don't really take anything from it other than you can train deer in a certain setting to show up.
For sure.
But other places, like my other private land spot, I haven't baited in over a month. I stopped it middle of August, I think.
Yeah.
I still am getting photos of big deer. One of the biggest deer I've had on camera showed up 2 days ago. Public lands, another thing. Like, I kind of want to get away from that, because obviously bait prices is going up, so that's one thing. But it's the same thing you were just saying. I feel like there's more honor in that animal than when you can actually outsmart him and find out, okay, he's traveling here. If you look back on old data, you can see he was here last year at this time, so he'll probably be there again. Or maybe the one place I've been hunting, if I go 100 yards to the west, to east, whatever, I can find, like you were saying, the funnel. And now you're like, oh, well, there's even bigger deer down here. Didn't even know. So I think what you're describing is kind of the transition I feel like I'm in right now, is like getting away from all the baiting stuff and really learning that woodsmanship side of things. I scouted for two hours last week just in this one little section, and I found nothing. And I'm like, okay, well, I know, not to go over here.
Right. You ruled it out. That's a huge thing. It's a huge thing.
Yeah,
do both, right? Do both. Put your bait out, shoot your does, shoot a buck on it if you want to. If you're like, man, it's been a rough year, I hadn't been able to get anything, I got one coming into a bait pile, knock yourself out. I mean, it's fun, right? It's fun. I go down to Texas and Mexico, right? I hunt Texas and Mexico. That's how you hunt down there. That's how you do it in Texas and Mexico every year, and I love it. It's relaxing. See a lot of deer, a lot of rut action. They put you out in a tower stand, and they run a corn feeder around it. The does come in and the bucks come in, and it's a fun time.
Yeah.
If I'm in Kansas, Kentucky, Ohio, Illinois, I want to hunt them. Even here in South Carolina, I want to do it because it is doable. I want to
Yeah.
try to do it through a woodsmanship approach, and that teaches me more as a hunter. So that's just it. I don't have a problem with it. Guys can do what they want to do. I'm just talking about me personally.
Yeah. Well, and I've been doing a lot of like I said earlier, listening to people that have been in it for longer than I've probably been alive. Right. And especially, I did an episode on the Rumpolo buck again and got a lot of hate for it because I said it wasn't real. And I have a lot of reasons why, but that led me down the road of looking at like all these legendary bucks that have been killed. And not a single one of them is saying, oh, yeah, I just went out there with a 40-pound bag of corn and poured it out and he just showed up. And I'm like, okay, so there's a trend there. Like, can you kill him? Yes. Are you going to have a better chance with bait out? I mean,
yes, you are. Absolutely, you are.
you think
Yeah,
so?
because
For a
yeah, because
6-year-old buck?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna if you've got a property and you can bait and feed a bunch of does in there, even though the buck's not coming in there, and you get off that bait pile and you do have a funnel or whatever, but there's a ton of does in there. I mean, he's going to come through there looking for does for sure. And if you're pulling does off of the neighbor's property and you're running a giant bait pile, heck yeah, your chances go way up. Yeah, absolutely. Even if you're not hunting them, I'm no different than a neighbor having a bunch of really manicured food plots and the other one being, raw. You're pulling those does in there, and then but there's a means to an end.
Yeah.
There's a couple famous guys that have thousands of acres in the Midwest that, I mean, it's like golf course manicured, man. I mean, it is state of the art, and they've got every feed apparatus, every food plot, every kind of soil sample and fertilizer, and I mean it like a golf course, and they've got all the deer in there, and a lot of those old big bucks get killed on the neighbor's property that has the 50-acre cutover, because that buck, he likes his solitude, and he'll get away from all that. He might come in there at night and feed, but there's so many deer around, and that pressure from the other deer, that happens some. So there is a fine line there of where it can become too much.
Yeah. Man, I feel like we went down such a rabbit hole there.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
for sure.
That tends to happen. So there is one thing I want to talk to you about. I know we're kind of running on almost an hour here, or maybe a little bit over, but what about some of the other hunts you did earlier this year? I know you did an axis hunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know you went to Africa.
Yep.
How was all of that?
I love it. I love to bow hunt. That's something that I've done forever, and I love to bow hunt. And when whitetail season goes out, I still like to do it. I love the axis meat. It's a lot of fun to hunt them in the rut. They have a rut that's kind of that end of April, May, June time frame. So it's hot, but they rut really late. So that's cool to hunt them there. And I love the meat. My wife and I and son eat a lot of venison, and the axis meat is delicious. So I love going and doing that. And then, I worked in Africa when I was young for 7 years. And so I have kind of a history and a bunch of buddies over there. And again, there's a kudu rut over there in April in Botswana. And so I went over to Botswana and hunted some kudu over there and bow hunted over water holes. And it was a lot of fun. Got to test out some new arrows, some new broadheads that I hadn't shot before. And so, yeah, I love it. I just love to hunt and love to bow hunt. So yeah, those were 2 trips in the off season that I did this year.
So those clips that y'all sent me to do that little promo, was that the axis hunt?
I am not sure which ones Wells
The one
sent.
that was on Instagram. It was like you in a blind and you shooting the target. It looked like you're on kind of like a ranch. And then
that would have definitely been axis.
That was?
Yep,
okay. I kind of thought that. I just wasn't sure.
Yeah. Because in Africa, we were in the Kalahari, which is it's called a desert. It's really a sand flat, but it's not really a desert. But yeah, it was big open country. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, it definitely wasn't that. Man, so all right, before we wrap this up, first I just want to say thank you for everything, not even just coming on this podcast, but just everything you guys have done, for the podcast for the past 2 years. It's meant a lot to me, and I've been very, very, very thankful for everything that you guys do and all the stuff that, you know, we've been able to work on and getting to see you down at the World Deer Expo 2 years ago. And now, you know, the new stuff that I know is going to be coming from Asio. But before we get into all that, you know, fancy stuff, what's the one more thing for the people that are listening? Because it is October. What's one thing in October that you are looking for? Not funnels, not any, like, what's the one thing when you go out to scout, you are just zeroed in on, you got to find it?
Well, that would definitely be the funnel.
Okay.
That would be that would be the one thing that I'm. Well, I guess if there was advice I could give, for October especially, is don't overdo it right now, because a lot of those mature bucks are still not moving in daylight.
Mm-hmm.
And until that testosterone really builds up in them and they start wanting to go after those first does, don't overdo it right now. Go shoot you some does, not in your good spots, not in your best spots, you know, kind of stay out of those really good spots. And I know everybody's anxious and wanting to go, but be patient. The magic time is coming where you can actually kill those bucks, where they will let their guard down. We get some colder weather in. They want to get out. They want to be aggressive. They want to go find those first does. So just be patient right now. That would be some advice that I would like. I have obviously the floods here, but I've actually sat in a stand in South Carolina 3 times, and our season opened August 15th. That's it.
Oh,
That's
wow.
the only 3 times and I was waiting until like this weekend to really start hunting. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Gotcha. Well, our season's been in for 3 weeks, and I think I've sat 4 times. So I might need to cool it a bit.
Yeah, and then get ready and really press it, man. When they start moving in daylight and they start rutting a little bit and start checking does, that's when you got to really be persistent and burn yourself out.
Yeah, and I feel the burnout when it's like mid-November, and I'm like, dude, I've been going so hard, and now the deer are starting to disappear. I just need to. I should have waited. I say it every single year, but awesome, man. Well, look, Joe, thank you again for coming on. Is there anything you want to tell the people that are listening? Maybe some new stuff coming from Asio. Anything we can expect to see?
No, I appreciate it, man. Congratulations again on 100 episodes. That's quite a feat. Congratulations on that. Well done. Asio, we do have our new hooded soft shell that just launched, and then we've got our puffy jacket. Those 2 pieces are really neat. If anybody's interested in that Bobby Worthington class, they can just email me at joe@asiogear.com. And if they're interested in his book, they can order that off the Asio Gear website. So those are some things. I really think that book, and if anybody is interested in that class, those 2 things will really help speed up a guy's progression into rut funnel hunting.
I might have to get that book. Is it on audio yet?
It's not on audio, but it is. Yeah, I'm with you, man.
I can't read.
I'm going to try to
dude.
get him to read it, and we'll put it on audio.
Yeah.
I'm not a big reader. I can read about 7 paragraphs a night, and then I fall asleep. So.
Yep. Me too. Oh, man. Well, awesome, dude. Thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, buddy. Thank you.
Like I said, thanks for everything you guys have done, and I can't wait to see where things go from here. But yeah, man, good luck this season. And then, you know, once I kill Trike, I've told you this before. Once I kill him, I am gonna FaceTime you. So
sweet.
Just be ready for it. I might be crying. I might be puffy-eyed, you know, snot coming down, just all that, but just be ready.
I hope so. That's awesome.
Awesome.
Good
man.
deal, man. Thank you again.
Yes, sir. Anytime.
All right, buddy.